They filed that 35-page motion. I took their motion and I put it on Facebook and doubled down. Said, look, everybody. Look, not only are they trying to mess with you, not only are they trying to close the trial, look how much resources they just spent trying to violate somebody's constitutional rights in secret. Okay? So because I took that event, I think it was like policing the police page or something. Basically, it got shared by like some like national things, and the event attendance doubled. Our side of the courtroom was packed. Hello, welcome back to the Liberty Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, attorney Nick Somberg. Today we have a great show for you. We have one of my favorite cases that I've ever worked on. This actually made national news, was seen by millions of people, where my client was facing 93 days behind bars for playing the song Fuck the Police by the NWA. And this is a case that I took pro bono. I saw it online and reached out to James, and James is here with us today.
Here I am. How's it going?
Good. How have you been?
I've been pretty well, maintaining. Not had any more hassle from it since then,
So I wanted to jump into how I even got involved with this case at first, because I was online and I my followers just tagged me in all sorts of things. And I saw the ticket, and I thought this was just like a meme, like something somebody made to be funny. And it said, misdemeanor crime for amplified music. And then in the notes of the actual ticket, he wrote for playing the song Fuck the Police or F the Police, whatever he wrote. And, when I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, who would ever charge this as a crime? And then I look at the bottom and it says 50th District Court, Pontiac, Michigan. I'm like, that's here. That's right here. I'm like, I could do something about this. So I reached out to you. Do you remember what I said?
I don't initially at first, but I know you were willing to take it on pro bono.
So what I told you, I'm like, hey, man, I'm sure that, because at the time, it had been shared like 7,000 times already. I mean, shares were exponential. So that's like millions of people had already known about this, millions. And I was like, hey, man, I'm sure people have offered you money to like donate to pay your ticket, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to stick it to them, if you want to take it the whole way, jury trial, no matter what, I'll do the whole thing for free.
Oh yeah, I was ready to take it on. I initially had posted it because I thought the remarks were funny and thought it was a little bit ridiculous. Little did I know it would just take off at an exponential rate. And there was some points where I had to turn my phone off. It was getting so out of hand.
So you just posted it on your personal Facebook?
Yep, just posted it just because I thought the remarks were funny, and then out of nowhere I start seeing a couple shares. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I check an hour later, and it's over 1,000. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
So this day, I'd like to know how this even could possibly happen. You're driving down in Pontiac, Michigan, mm-hmm. right? And what happened? How did you have police contact on this day?
I was driving down Walton. Initially I was going to the Super Chief Coney across the street, and before I even went in there, I had seen him pull the guy over, and it looks like he was being a little bit volatile. I could tell by his body mannerisms. So I'm like, okay,
So you saw somebody else pulled over by a police officer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And it looked like he was giving the guy a hard time.
The officer was giving the person pulled over a hard time. And you didn't know this person?
Nope, didn't know him from a lick of hair.
Okay. So then what happened?
Well, I was like, okay, you know what? I was like, if this guy's still here, and when I come out, I'm going to go over there and do something. So, he was there. Sure enough, he was there. So I went across the street, rolled all four windows down, opened the sunroof, turned the volume all the way up, and just left the song running while
So is it a little something like this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
we can't play that too long for copyright reasons, but that was the song.
Yeah,
we all know the song.
Absolutely. Honestly, beforehand, I was almost thinking about playing another version of another artist, Boosie, but I was like, I'm going to go old school. So I went in there and I did that, and I slowly walked inside and slowly walked back out. Took the time.
You're exercising your free speech.
Mm-hmm.
You know that you have a First Amendment right in this country to redress your grievances against the government. Exactly. That you can say, F you could say the police, Trump, Obama. You have the absolute right to tell government officials, specifically That's the most protection, to tell them to go fuck themselves or fuck you.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, knowing all that, you decide that you want to tell this officer that you don't appreciate what he's doing to a fellow citizen. You roll your windows down and you put the song on.
Absolutely. I wanted him to feel it. I wanted it to a certain extent. I wanted it to get under his skin, but not overly, just enough to get the message across. Like, hey, you know, if you're doing that, you're going to be subject to things like I did.
Did you think you're being a little controversial?
Not at all.
You think you're being funny?
Funny, yes. Funny, meanwhile, exercise my First Amendment.
But now you weren't trying to like disturb the peace.
No, not at all.
Well, what kind of vehicle did you have at the time?
I had a compact Camry, a Toyota Camry.
Stock?
Yep.
No
Bone stock, no aftermarket.
No 12-inch subwoofers in the back?
Not even a stock 8 in the back window.
And you grew up in Pontiac.
I sure did.
So how often driving around do you hear other people's rap music?
All the time. Stuff far worse. You know, you have people blaring songs, you know, and all it's talking about is sex. I mean, I believe that's far worse.
Yes.
You know, and here I am just playing a simple song expressing a
sure. You hear songs like the type of things like Kamala Harris has at her rallies, just vulgar, terrible things. Yeah. So you pull up on the other side of the same gas pump as this person being pulled over, right?
Yeah.
And you left your music running.
Or left it running full blast that the car could go to, all the windows down, any window that went down, it was down. And I just casually walked inside and kind of, you know, when I was in there getting stuff, I kind of casually was watching him. It looks like he was getting aggravated too. And I was like, good. Maybe you'll think next time before you try to antagonize somebody else.
Now, if you were playing, you know, classical music or, you know, some pop music, Katy Perry at the same volume, do you think you would have been messed with?
No, not at all.
So,
probably would have been looked at funny, but absolutely wouldn't have been approached.
So you agree that this case, it wasn't about the volume of the music. It was about the content. It was about the words.
Yeah, it was definitely about the content.
So you go inside, you buy something, I assume. You go back to your car.
And then that's when, right as I got in, as you see in the music video, he said, hey, come here for a minute. And I just went, I didn't do nothing wrong. What do you mean? And he's like, he goes to bitching about the volume and everything else. It's not about the words. Or I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I just heard you cuss at that guy over there.
Yeah.
And there's nobody else here at the time.
And that's a great point. Did you ever think that you'd be facing jail time?
No. I thought it would be like a little get on me and then go about your way type of deal. But
now, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Good. Yeah, he persisted, and I was like, all right, I'll just take it, I guess.
So at the time, you got that ticket in your hand, and that's the one that you posted online, right? Yep. And it had that box misdemeanor checked.
It did.
And when you saw that, did you know what it meant?
Not at first. I initially didn't even realize it first until I posted it. You know, as it started getting, I would say it was at about 200 shares. Then I seen it checked, so I look at the ticket physically. I'm like, oh fuck.
So you then had this realization that you're facing a crime.
Yeah. Crime.
You could be put in jail. You could be put on probation. You could have to pay money. You might have to hire a lawyer, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
All this stuff for exercising your basic freedom of speech.
Right. A simple volume with a worded song.
So now I reached out. I agreed to be your lawyer. And the first thing I did was I actually filed a motion and a brief to dismiss the whole case without going to trial based on a First Amendment argument. That I said that this is purely content control. So the government, they can restrict speech in some manners, that time, place, and manner. So, for example, if you have commercial speech, you have the billboard, now you can't just like put a video of like porn up on a I-75.
Just like Auburn Hills did.
I remember those guys. But you can't, the government could say they have reasonable restrictions. You can't just have like people fucking on a billboard on I-75. Time, place, and manner restrictions. Now, what the government did in this case, it wasn't about the volume of what you played, but they were trying to allege that it was. It was the content of what you played. and they're trying to control your content. And when they do so, they have to go falls was under strict scrutiny basis. It has to be the highest level. They have to show that they have the absolute best reason, and there's no alternative or less means to serve a government interest. Okay, and in this case, I'm just shocked, but almost not really shocked, that Oakland County Prosecutor's Office thought that this would be a good idea to pursue this against you and to actually force you to go to a trial.
Yeah, they didn't know what I had in my back pocket at the time.
Well, the thing was that, so we filed a motion to dismiss based on constitutional grounds. Mm-hmm. Judge denied it. Judge said, hey, this is a question of fact for the jury. Okay, so that's what happened. When I met with the prosecutor at that time, I spoke to her. I don't remember the name of it was a female prosecutor at the time, but I told her, like, hey, like, you guys are really stepping in it this time. Like, this is purely constitutionally protected behavior. You know, you're the city might get, if we win, which we will, the city's going to get in trouble for this. You guys are going to have to pay this guy. I mean, you need to drop this now before you start accumulating more damages and force you to go to jury trial. And they say, no.
Yeah, I think they were maybe trying to prove their authority, but it didn't work out too well for them.
Well, how do I don't like that our tax dollars, especially in the city of Pontiac, where, we don't have a police department. I don't even think are there schools left?
Yeah, I think there's like Pontiac Northern.
There's like maybe one or two schools left. We have crumbling areas. We have dilapidated houses, falling to the ground. You got the Phoenix Center for people that are local, that's been sitting there for years. And they're using our people's tax dollars to pay judges and prosecutors and to write briefs and to bring evidence. They brought in for trial 30 people from the community to make them sit there all day to listen to this crap.
Every bit of one of them say, this is our time's being fucking wasted. Why the fuck are we here?
So, right. So we set it for jury trial. And, it's your right to, it's the right to a jury trial is yours to exercise. So you could have took a deal, right?
Could have.
You could have pled guilty, right?
Could have, yes.
And did you want to?
Nope, absolutely not.
And when we set this for trial, I decided that we need to make this a bigger deal than it already is. And I created a Facebook event called Rap Music's Not a Crime.
I remember that too.
And I made a Facebook event and I said, hey, I told a story about what happened. And I said, hey, if you're local, come watch this jury trial. Let the government see. I want as much support as possible in that courtroom. Let the government see how many people are against them. And do you remember what they did in response?
Yeah, they tried to file an emergency motion.
Yes. They spent more time filing an emergency motion. It was like 35 pages long on why, and that's with exhibits and everything, but on why this trial needs to be behind closed doors, not in the eyes of the public. And our founding fathers set up public hearing, that you have a right, constitutional right to a public hearing, because the king used to just say, hey, you're guilty, or, oh, you're a witch, burn her at the stake, that that you're supposed to have a public and speedy trial and right to an attorney. And they do, in some circumstances, close the doors, but it's like you got a kid that was like raped, okay? Or you got some very sensitive, embarrassing situation where you don't want to put a victim through more trauma. So you don't want a victim to have to sit there if they have to testify and say what their uncle did to them. That you don't want this kid to have to look in front of 30, 50 people in the courtroom, right? It's traumatic. But in your case, they applied that standard to say, hey, we don't want anyone to know what we're doing to James. We don't want anyone to see what we're doing to this guy. We want to try him and convict him in a closed hearing. And they spent 35 pages trying to argue that. You remember that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And who's to say how much they probably spent doing that as well?
That's what I'm saying. It's
just like, that's.
I mean, how much does a lawyer cost? How much does a lawyer cost per hour? How many hours did they put in that hearing? How many hours we got to pay for the judge to argue it? I had to file a response to it.
And if I remember right, didn't they have like a city council person sitting in on that?
Yeah. Too? So that was at the trial, but I just want to say the judge denied it. To her credit, she said, no, This is a public open hearing, right? But she also said at trial we were not allowed to mention the First Amendment. And you remember I was pissed. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's the whole case. She goes, Mr. Somberg, if you mention the First Amendment, I will hold you in contempt. You remember that?
Yeah.
I'm like, God, like,
ridiculous.
get in line. You know, I'm not my first rodeo with the contempt stuff.
No, and they threaten you all the time, but they know what they're doing is bullshit.
And they threaten you when you're right, because everybody who's been through elementary school knew this was a First Amendment case, right? So the day of trial comes. Okay, no. So actually, what they did when they filed that 35-page motion. I took their motion and I put it on Facebook and doubled down. Said, look, everybody. Look, not only are they trying to mess with you, not only are they trying to close the trial, look how much resources they just spent trying to violate somebody's constitutional rights in secret. Okay? So because I took that event, I think it was like policing the police page or something. Basically, it got shared by like some like national things, and the event attendance doubled in a day. So backfire, and that's like my whole, you know, as an attorney and running for Congress and all these things is like the government needs transparency. Like we should be able to see what is going on in our courtrooms, and also consequences. You know, that the government suffers very little, if any, ever consequences for the bad things that they do. So, your parents know about this?
They did. They knew about it right after I left. And it was the first people I hit up before I posted it.
And what is it? What did your dad think when you're?
They both thought it was absurd. They laughed and they said, "Good job." And they pretty much saying, "Fuck them."
And they live in Pontiac. Or did your dad live here?
No, yeah, he does. He lives in Metamora.
Okay. So now we go to the day of trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted you to plead, but you pled to nothing, right?
Absolutely not.
And that was my advice to, like, hey, we got this, 100%. Now, I remember the day of trial. You mentioned that there was like a city clerk person sitting in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. Our side of the courtroom was packed. Standing room only.
People I've never met before.
People in suits, black, white. I mean, everybody.
Dearborn guy who walked in the police station somehow showed up.
Everybody from all walks. Our whole side packed. So now on their side of the courtroom, they just got this like single like little old lady who they probably were just like, listen, Fran, like you better be at this trial. We need somebody on our side because we are so wrong.
Probably worked the basement filing area or something.
And you know, I went up to her, I'm like, hi ma'am, how are you? I'm like, so like you're really on these people's side? Like you're really like, you know, this is like free speech, 100%, and
100%.
You're the only person. She's like, no, like he shouldn't use such foul language. I'm like, oh, like, well, that's not what we're here for. But okay, they got one person. You know, you can't convince everybody. You know, so you're always gonna have somebody dissenting. So they found their one random person from the city who was like, yeah, let's lock this guy up. So the morning of trial, were you scared? How were you feeling?
You know, honestly, I was just ready to shove it down their throat, and you know, I want you to realize how severe this is, and I don't think they fully understand how severe it is being the people they are.
They didn't even care.
No, they don't, not one bit. Like not even knowing that they could be out of thousands of dollars, which eventually they were. So
right, and you could have. Now imagine just you're somebody who didn't post this on Facebook, that you were just some kid riding through Pontiac with playing the song "Fuck the Police," and now you're charged with the crime, and you took no action. You just went in there and said, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm guilty. Like, the government could have got away with this.
Absolutely. And who's to say how many other people they pulled over for the same thing that didn't take it to the level we took it to?
Right. And these prosecutors are not spending their money. They have nothing to risk. They have nothing to lose. That they can just put you... I've said a lot, the process is the punishment. That for a lot of people, and this is a misdemeanor, but you know, I'm on cases where they have weak, flimsy evidence, and they charge somebody with serious felonies that are weak, and they're in court for a year and a half just to win or get it dismissed. And what does the government do? They go, sorry,
sorry about your luck.
Sorry, oh well, you just had your life ruined and paid thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. So this entire case is really just on this one police officer and what he decided to do that day. And the government put him on the stand. They question him, and then of course they get to get the story out of him. And police officers are also, they're trained expert witnesses. Like, this is what they do every day. People think their job is to protect and serve people. Their job is actually to collect evidence for the government, for the prosecutors, and then the prosecutors decide whether or not to charge people. And then police officers also testify in court, and they testify so often that, they're basically experts. They know what to say, and they know what not to say. So I remember, and this was honestly one of my favorite gotcha moments of my career because it was so good. And when I got to do my cross-examination of this police officer, we went through that your car had no loud sound system, that you weren't bothering anybody. But I asked him, and I really backed him into the point that I wanted to make, that I had asked him, I go, well, sir, this wasn't about the word the or police. It was about the word fuck. And you feel that people shouldn't have to hear this word, that, think of the women and children. Like, nobody should have to hear the word fuck out in public, right? Unless they can consent to it. And he's like, yeah, it was the word fuck. And under oath, admits to this stuff. I'm like, okay, can we please go to exhibit, defense exhibit A or whatever it was at 6 minutes and whatever seconds. And what we had done was, not only did we get the video from the gas station, we had that police officer's dash camera from the first guy who was pulled over, not you. So we had all the audio and video from the first guy who he stopped and his conversation that he had with him. And I think I had an assistant or something, but I was like, please hit play at this timestamp. And the officer walks back with a ticket for the first guy. He goes, all right, buddy, I'm not going to fuck with you too bad. I gave you a break. We hit pause. And we hit pause on the exhibit. I'm like, sir, what did you just say? What was that word that we just heard? And I remember the prosecutor's like, objection, freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm like, so you just used the word fuck, right? Do you think people wanted to hear that? And then prosecutor's objecting. She's throwing her papers, I remember I asked, I go, does Oakland County train you to speak to people like that? Objection. That I knew that was sustained, I couldn't ask that question. But he just did what he accused you of doing. He just said the very word to a person who's minding, got a ticket, but you're going to charge somebody with a crime and try to put them in jail when 5 seconds beforehand, you just used the same language. In public to somebody else.
For all you know, he could have been some God-fearing person that might have been offended by that. You could have a whole nother situation just by that alone. And you're messing with people regardless. At the same time, you're giving that guy a ticket. I believe I heard part in the video where the guy was also admiring his car at the same time.
Yeah, well, and the thing is with the First Amendment is that people need to realize that the First Amendment protects us from the government. It doesn't protect the government from us. So you are far more protected in using whatever language you want than a government official the other way around. Now, the jury, and you can see the looks on their faces, right? Because all these people are from Pontiac. So it's like, hey, guys, you ever, drive ever? Every single time you're out here, there's people playing their music from cars.
Far worse.
And you got people riding around on 30-inch rims, got the trunk, going.
Knocking people's pictures off the wall.
Yeah, for real. You could hear it down the block, and no one's facing criminal charges for this, never in a million years.
Not at all.
So this was one of those cases where I asked the jury, I said, in closing arguments, I said, not only do I want you to come back not guilty, obviously, but to make a point to these people that thought this was a good idea, a good use of taxpayer dollars that we've all now wasted, I want you to come back with the fastest not guilty that they've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes.
I think it was they probably went back there
and said, okay, guys, let's just sit here for a second and we'll just go back out and say not guilty.
You didn't stop there. We got justice, but I think you needed a little bit more. I think we needed to prove the point just a little bit more to the government. So what did you do next?
Well, we went after him for a civil suit.
So you, I didn't do the civil case, right?
Nope.
You had a different attorney, and they filed in federal court.
They absolutely did, yes.
And that was for violation of your constitutional rights, correct?
Yep, correct.
Now, what did you end up? What was the judgment in your? So it was a judgment for you, right? You won.
Yep.
They had to settle, correct?
They did have to settle.
And what was the amount of money they had to settle for?
$20,000.
So you got 20 grand for playing "Fuck the
I
Police."
sure did, man.
Did you get any other media coverage about this? I mean, anybody reach out to you?
I did. One of my favorites was a pro black magazine called The Root. It was by an editor named Michael Harriet. And literally the first couple sentences, it said it only took the jury 9 minutes to deliver an answer to one of the greatest white allies ever. So I felt pretty proud to be accepted.
The greatest,
like that.
one of the great white
One
allies
of the greatest
ever.
white allies ever. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, I thought that was better than XXL Magazine to me.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been an awesome
pleasure.
guest.
It was a
This is a
pleasure, man.
great story, and I'm glad that we got to
I'm
retell
glad
it.
I was able to meet you, man.
Heck yeah.
You've been a hell of a person and doing a lot of great things for people in the city.
Thank you. I really
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
that. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Liberty Lawyer Podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you next time.